Chosen one, this message you're about to hear is a divine revelation from the throne room of heaven. This is not motivation. This is not opinion. This is not a general word. This is a courtroom release from the Spirit of God. You didn't arrive here casually. You were summoned, because something happened in heaven that does not happen often, and it happened because of you. God said, "You made me change the rules for you." Let that sit in your spirit for a moment. This is not favoritism rooted in pride. This is grace responding to surrender. This is heaven acknowledging a heart that refused to quit, a soul that kept choosing obedience when it would have been easier to walk away. You didn't just pray. You didn't just endure. You aligned. And alignment moves heaven in ways effort never can. There are rules that govern systems. There are patterns God honors. But there are moments, rare, weighty moments, when heaven responds to covenant faithfulness with exceptional mercy. This is one of those moments, not because you were perfect, but because you were honest. Not because you were strong, but because you stayed. And heaven recorded it. Angels witnessed it. And God himself stepped in and said, "For this one, I will do what I do not normally do." This is why things that should have disqualified you didn't. This is why delays didn't destroy you. This is why doors that should have remained shut are about to open suddenly. The rules said no. History said too late. The enemy said denied. But grace spoke louder, and grace overruled the process. What you're about to experience is not normal progression. It is divine exception. Before we go any further, if your spirit bears witness to this word, respond now. Like this message as your agreement. Subscribe so you don't miss the next word heaven releases. Drop your city and nation in the comments. Let us see where the remnant is rising. And to those who are supporting us by sowing into this word through the link pinned comment or super thanks features, understand this. Your seed is not a donation, it is a legal act. You are saying, "I agree with heaven's ruling, I receive the exception." May your seed speak in the courts of heaven and silence every opposing voice. Now stay with me, don't scroll, because in the next moments, we're going to go deeper into why God changed the rules, what that means for your next season, and how to walk wisely in a grace that few are trusted to carry. What heaven just authorized over your life is powerful, and it must be understood. To understand how powerful this message is, you must first understand what the rules are. God is a God of laws, not random actions or emotional decisions. His kingdom operates with structure, intention, and order. There are laws that govern spiritual life just as surely as natural laws govern the earth. These laws are not meant to restrict you. They are meant to establish stability and predictability in how God works. There are laws of seed time and harvest, laws of process and preparation, laws of waiting, endurance, and growth. Scripture makes this unmistakably clear in Genesis chapter 8, verse 22, where God declares, "As long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest shall not cease." That statement is not poetic language, it is a rule. It establishes that outcomes follow inputs and results follow obedience to process. We are taught this order repeatedly throughout Scripture and life itself. You sow before you reap. You prepare before you are promoted. You wait before you enter. Growth precedes visibility. Character precedes authority. Most people live their entire lives under these laws, and that is not a curse, it is divine order. These rules protect you from shortcuts that would damage you and from outcomes you are not ready to sustain. But then, there are moments in Scripture that don't follow the normal flow, moments that interrupt expectation, moments that feel sudden, accelerated, or undeserved by process alone. These moments stand out because they reveal something deeper than rules. They reveal relationship. They are not violations of God's nature. They are expressions of his heart. These are moments where heaven interrupts itself, where God steps into time and compresses process, where mercy overrides sequence and grace accelerates outcome. God does not abandon his laws, but he is sovereign over them, and when he chooses to move this way, it is always purposeful, intentional, and personal. And that is where you come in. Hear this clearly, because this distinction matters more than most people realize. God does not change rules for complainers. He does not bend systems for entitlement. He does not release exceptions because someone is loud, emotional, or demanding. Heaven is not moved by pressure tactics. God remains consistent, righteous, and just in all his ways. What he responds to is not noise, but posture. God changes rules for alignment. Alignment is not about perfection. It is about position. Alignment is when your heart stays pure under pressure, even when frustration would be easier. It is when your faith remains intact during delay, even when doubt tries to creep in. It is when your obedience continues without applause, recognition, or reward. Alignment says, I will do what is right because God is worthy, not because the outcome is immediate. You didn't demand, you didn't manipulate, you didn't threaten God with your absence. You didn't treat obedience like a transaction, you stayed. And staying is spiritual. Scripture affirms this truth in Matthew chapter 24 verse 13, which says, He who endures to the end shall be saved. Endurance is proof of alignment. It shows trust that goes beyond convenience. Most people quit one season before heaven intervenes. Most people walk away right before the shift they prayed for. But you didn't. You stayed when prayers seemed unanswered. You stayed when others mocked your faith. You stayed when obedience cost you comfort, reputation, or ease. And heaven took notes, not because God forgets, but because alignment always attracts divine attention. Scripture reveals something many people overlook. Heaven is not chaotic, it is judicial. God is not impulsive, he is orderly, intentional, and just. The Bible pulls back the curtain in Daniel chapter 7 verse 10 saying, The court was seated and the books were opened. That imagery is deliberate. It tells us that heaven operates with records, proceedings, and timing. Nothing is random, nothing is forgotten. There are books, there are records, there are verdicts. This means your life is not being evaluated by moments alone, but by patterns of faithfulness. Your tears are recorded, not one is wasted. Your obedience is documented, even when no one saw it. Your private sacrifices are archived, especially the ones that cost you comfort, reputation, or ease. Heaven pays close attention to what the world ignores, and there comes a moment, often unseen to us, when God reviews the record and speaks with authority. This one has remained loyal. This one did not compromise. This one trusted me when logic failed. That moment is critical because it marks a shift. It is when endurance turns into testimony and faithfulness turns into favor. It is when heaven acknowledges what earth overlooked. That is when the judge becomes your advocate. Scripture declares in Romans chapter 8 verse 31, If God is for us, who can be against us? This is not favoritism. It is not bias. It is faithfulness rewarded. Heaven does not play favorites, but it does honor alignment. And when God stands on your behalf, no accusation can override the record he himself has kept. Let's go deeper, because this pattern is not new and it is not rare in Scripture. God has done this before, many times. The Bible is filled with moments where rules were interrupted, timelines were adjusted, and systems were overridden, not because God became inconsistent, but because alignment invited intervention. These stories are not written to impress us. They are written to instruct us. Consider Hezekiah. God declared his death. The verdict was issued. The prophet delivered the word, and by every spiritual rule, the case was closed. But then something extraordinary happened. One prayer, one honest, broken, surrendered prayer, moved heaven. God said,